If you're paying for GCP Cloud Interconnect but still experiencing latency spikes, you probably configured your VLAN attachments wrong, and it's costing you thousands in wasted bandwidth every single month.
Okay, that got my attention. I've been looking into interconnect options, and honestly, I'm confused about when to use dedicated versus partner.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Network Ninja Cloudcast. I'm your host, and today we're breaking down GCP Cloud Interconnect with my co-host here.
Hey everyone, super excited for this one because hybrid connectivity is everywhere right now.
So let's dig into your confusion. What's tripping you up about dedicated versus partner interconnect?
I guess I don't understand why Google offers two different ways to connect. Isn't the goal the same, getting private connectivity to GCP?
Great question. Think of it like shipping options. Dedicated interconnect is like owning your own delivery truck fleet. You drive directly to Google's warehouse, no middleman. Partner interconnect is like using FedEx or UPS. They handle the logistics, you just hand off your packages.
So with dedicated, I'm physically connecting my equipment to Google's?
Exactly right. With dedicated interconnect, you provision a direct physical connection between your on-premises router and Google's network at one of their colocation facilities. Google maintains a list of supported colocation facilities worldwide where you can establish these connections. You'll want to check their current documentation for the latest location since they update it periodically. You're literally running fiber from your cage to Google's cage in the same building.
That sounds expensive and complicated. What kind of bandwidth are we talking?
Dedicated interconnect comes in 10 gigabits per second or 100 gigabits per second circuits. The minimum commitment is one 10 gigabits per second connection. For production workloads, Google recommends at least 2 connections for redundancy, ideally across 2 different edge availability domains. So you're looking at provisioning 2 10 gigabits per second connections minimum if you want that 99.99% SLA, though your actual usable bandwidth depends on whether you configure them as active/active or active/standby.
Okay, so if I need less than 10 gigabits per second, that's where partner comes in?
Precisely. Partner Interconnect lets you connect through a supported service provider. The bandwidth options are much more flexible, with specific capacity tiers starting at 50 megabits per second and going up through 100 megabits per second, 500 megabits per second, 1 gigabit per second, 10 gigabits per second, all the way up to 50 gigabits per second. Not all partners support all tiers though, so you'll need to check what your specific partner offers. You're essentially buying a slice of the partner's existing dedicated interconnect connection to Google.
Wait, so with partner interconnect, there's an extra hop through the service provider's network?
Yes, and this is where my shipping analogy needs validation. The technical reality is that with partner interconnect, your traffic goes from your network to the partner's network, then to Google. That's 2 BGP sessions instead of 1. Your latency will be slightly higher, typically 1 to 3 milliseconds additional, depending on the partner's network topology.
Got it. So dedicated is faster but requires more commitment. What about the actual configuration once I've chosen one?
This is where VLAN attachments come in, and this is the part people mess up constantly. A VLAN attachment, also called an interconnect attachment in the API, is what actually connects your interconnect to your VPC network. Think of the physical interconnect as the highway, and VLAN attachments as the on-ramps and off-ramps to specific destinations.
So I could have one dedicated interconnect but multiple VLAN attachments going to different VPCs?
Exactly. Each VLAN attachment gets its own 802.1q VLAN ID and its own BGP session with a cloud router. Here's a concrete example. Let's say you have a 10 gigabits per second dedicated interconnect. You could create 3 VLAN attachments, one for your production VPC with VLAN ID 100, one for your development VPC with VLAN ID 200, and one for a shared services VPC with VLAN ID 300. Each gets its own /29 link local IP range for the BGP peering.
What IP ranges are we talking about for those BGP sessions?
Google uses the 169.254.0.0 out of 16 link local range for the BGP peering addresses. When you create a VLAN attachment, you can let Google auto-assign addresses or specify your own from that range. For example, your production attachment might use 169.254.1.0 out of 29, giving you 169.254.1.1 for the cloud router and 169.254.1.2 for your on-premises router. Google always allocates a /29 block which gives you 6 usable addresses, though only 2 are actually used for the BGP peering.
And I'm guessing the cloud router is what handles the BGP on Google's side?
Correct. The cloud router is a fully managed BGP speaker. You configure your own ASN for the cloud router, typically a private ASN from the 64,512 to 65,534 range, or the 4-byte range 4,200,000,000 to 4,294,967,294. On Google's side, their edge routers use ASN 16,550 for dedicated interconnect peering. This is critical. You need a cloud router in the same region as your VLAN attachment. If your interconnect terminates in US East 4 but your VPC resources are in US Central 1, you need to think carefully about your routing architecture.
What's the biggest mistake you see people make with VLAN attachments?
Two things. First, not enabling global routing on their cloud router. By default, Cloud Router only advertises subnets from its own region. If you have a multi-region VPC and you want to reach all subnets over interconnect, you need to set the advertised route priority and enable global dynamic routing mode on the VPC. Second mistake is MTU mismatch. Interconnect uses 1440-byte MTU by default, but you can configure VLAN attachments to use 1500-byte MTU if your on-premises equipment and network path support it. For dedicated interconnect, you can even enable jumbo frames up to 8896 bytes, but this requires explicit configuration on both the VLAN attachment and the VPC network. If your on-premises equipment is sending larger frames than your VLAN attachment is configured for, you'll get fragmentation and performance tanks.
Let me make sure I've got this. Dedicated interconnect means I own the physical connection, minimum 10 gigabits per second, direct to Google. Partner interconnect goes through a service provider. More flexible bandwidth starting at 50 megabits per second. Either way, I use VLAN attachments to connect that pipe to my VPCs, and each attachment needs its own cloud router BGP session with link local, addressing from 169.254.0.0 out of 16.
Perfect summary. One pro tip: always create VLAN attachments in pairs across two different edge availability domains for redundancy. This gives you protection if one of Google's edge devices fails. Google's SLA of 99.99% uptime requires this dual attachment setup across separate edge availability domains.
This makes so much more sense now. I'm going to go check Google's documentation for the current interconnect locations list and see which colocation facility is closest to our data center.
That's it for today's episode. If you found this helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.
And share this with anyone setting up hybrid connectivity to GCP.
Thanks for watching the Network Ninja Cloudcast. See you in the next one.